the Doctors of Doom, or should I say Doctor of Doom, Fantasy Football Podcast. That's right, boys and girls. Very special episode this week because I am flying solo. Me, myself, and I, Alex the Shark Sparks, am here as your host, and there ain't nobody here with me. As you all know, Vinny's got a kid now. He's got responsibilities, yada, yada, yada. He's not here. Mitch, yeah, I don't know, man. He couldn't make it this week. He had some work stuff going on, but I could not have a podcast because we're in the playoffs. We literally just had championship weekend. We got the Super Bowl coming up as the last game of the season. I had to give you some kind of content. So here we are, and by we, I mean me. Hopefully you still enjoy it, and if you don't, sucks to be you, I guess, because you still listen anyway. All right, so let's dive right into it. Let's talk NFL action. Obviously, a lot of NFL news going on, but as always, we're going to start talking about the playoffs themselves. So we'll go here to the playoff bracket. Championship Sunday. We had two games. One was very good. The other was not. Let's just be honest. I mean, it was close, but it wasn't a good game. So we'll start with the one that I thought wasn't a good game. We'll go Broncos-Pats. We talked about this a lot on the pod last week. Broncos were shorthanded. Unfortunately, their running back couldn't make it back to the game. J.K. Dobbins, there was some hope he might get off IR, be able to play in this one. He did not. And then obviously, Bo Nix being out. We got to see Stidham play. They caught the Pats sleeping on one pass. They got away with it one time where they threw a deep ball that the Pats weren't ready for, and that's how they picked their 7 points. Other than that, they couldn't score. A lot of missed field goals in this game. Weather was absolutely a factor. Snow was coming down hard. It would have been coming down harder if they played in New England, but in Denver, the first half was kind of playable. The second half was not. The teams just couldn't do anything. They would move the ball and then nothing would happen. And the Broncos took the L. There was an opportunity for points at one point in the game where they opted to not take a field goal, instead go for it on fourth down, did not convert. And you have to wonder if that decision cost them. That's kind of an observation I had during this playoff run. I wish the other guys were here so I could discuss it with them, what I've noticed, but I pointed this out in our group chat. During the regular season, the teams that go for it on fourth down are usually the teams that are desperate, right? They're either because they're losing and they have to go for it, or they're trying to be tricky and get away with something because they know they need that. I mean, the Lions are a great example, right? The Lions go on fourth down more than anybody, and when it hits, like last season, they go 14-3. When it misses, like this season, they go, 9-8 or whatever it was. So, it's a desperation move. It's a move that teams that have nothing to lose go for. Usually the teams in the playoffs don't go for it on fourth down a lot, or when they do, it's like, a fourth and inches type situation. But this playoff run, we saw so many times where the teams would go for it on fourth down for all these teams. And like I said, the Broncos went for a fourth down and I get that I said field goals were hard, but this was like a fourth down inside the 20. Like this would have been a chip shot, and this was before the weather was so horrendous. So it would have been made most likely. If they make that field goal there and they're tied, then anything can happen in overtime in a snow game. I just think I think the decision to go for it on fourth down really impacted a lot of these teams. The Rams also had a fourth down they went for that was kind of controversial in my opinion. Not nearly as bad because they were worried they might not get the ball back. But I mean, they lost by 4 points. They get that field goal, then the game's very different, right? So I don't know. A lot of teams went for it. That was my observation. So Pats-Broncos game, it was a snooze fest. Like I said, it was a close game, but it was just a bunch of 3 and outs and not a lot happening. The few times they did cross midfield, it was leading to a missed field goal. The other game, on the other hand, was a great game. Rams-Seahawks, both teams showed up. Both teams played out. Both teams had big mistakes that the other team was able to capitalize on. The Rams had a horrendous muff punt that led to a Seahawks field goal, and then later the Seahawks had a bad it was like a bad bad penalty. That's what it was. Sorry, I couldn't remember. They had a fourth down situation. Third down. They get off the field after the play is over. It's already fourth and long. Rams are going to have to punt. After the play is over, a Seahawk defender gets called for unsportsmanlike because he's taunting the entire Rams sideline. Not just one player. He's literally taunting every player on the sideline. They get a 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. That extends the drives. Rams go score. So both teams scored off kind of a boneheaded play by their team, which I like, by the way. I don't like boneheaded plays, but when there are boneheaded plays in a high stakes scenario like this, I'm glad when both teams kind of do it to even each other out. Just because like I want to have a good game, and like this was a good game, and like when the muff punt happened, I thought it kind of ruined the game because like the Seahawks were up like a couple of points. The muff punt happened, they get a touchdown. Now they're up 2 scores for the first time in the game, and I was afraid they might run away with it. Now the Rams did battle back. Like I said, the unsportsmanlike penalty kind of clawed them back into it, but I was definitely worried. But yeah, it was a great game, close game. The Rams, with 5 minutes left, had the ball down in the red zone, opted not to take the field goal, went for it on 4th down, did not convert, leaving it a 4-point game. When they finally got the ball back from the Seahawks, they just couldn't quite move the ball far enough down the field, obviously, to get a touchdown. They may have had an opportunity to get in field goal range. We'll never know because the clock ran out on them. But, yeah, I don't know. I just think all the going for it on 4th down, like I get you want to risk it to get the biscuit, but there's a reason you got here. You got here because you're one of the best teams. So act like you're one of the best teams and play accordingly. But yeah, end of the day, I think the Seahawks were the better team. Ironically, the Seahawks have been the best defense in the league, except when they play the Rams. So that'll be interesting to see when they play someone who's not the Rams next week. The Patriots defense has looked a lot better, but again, you have to look at who they've played the last 3 weeks. Honestly, in the playoffs, they played the Broncos with a backup quarterback and a backup running back. They played the Texans, who, quite frankly, their starting quarterback was awful, and they played the Chargers when Justin Herbert, again, we talked about this, had no O-line in front of him. Like, literally, I feel like you could go to any high school and grab 3 of their linemen and be like, yo, go block for Justin Herbert, and he'd be in a similar situation what he was in that game. So it's hard to say where they're at. But that's the teams we have. It's a Super Bowl rematch of, a game that would be remembered fondly if you were a Seahawks fan, if not for the worst play call in NFL history, where they chose not to run the ball from the 1-yard line with Marshawn Lynch, a.k.a. Beast Mode. So we'll see if they can get their revenge. Patriots, their dynasty was over for all of 5 minutes, and now they're back in the Super Bowl. So, not loving that, but we'll see. Seahawks right now are heavy favorites. They're 4.5-point favorites. This is on a neutral field, so no movement one way or the other based on where they're playing. I mean, I say it's neutral. Now they're playing where the Niners play, their home game. So Seattle does have experience in that stadium because they're in that division, and it is on the West Coast. So maybe there's a slight edge there because it's going to be closer for their fans to travel, but I don't think you're going to have any problem getting Boston fans to travel to the game. So, yeah, neutral field, Seahawks are 4.5-point favorites. That feels right. I just feel like the Seahawks have been absolutely rolling the last few weeks of the season, and obviously in the playoffs here. Not that the Patriots aren't winning, they are, but the Patriots are winning close-ish matches against teams they should be better than. But I will say, I do think weather's definitely been a factor in some of these games. Against the Texans, I think there's a lot of rain. Against the Broncos, obviously there was snow. Now there wasn't really weather so much in the Charger game, but yeah, I mean we'll see, right? But I don't know. I feel like Seattle's definitely the favorite. Vegas feels they're the favorite. Now the fact that I'm picking Seattle means you should probably go bet on New England because like I have been terrible on all these picks. I think my picks make the Super Bowl were Jags Rams. That didn't happen. I made a lot of picks that I got wrong, and even the ones I got right were kind of close and sketchy. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I do think when you're looking at the Super Bowl matchup, Seahawks, Patriots, I think the Seahawks are the favorite. And I'm also rooting for the Seahawks because, we've had a ton of Patriots championships. Let's get something else in there. And, so go Hawks. We'll see how that goes. One other thing I want to do, comment on the playoffs, though, and this might just be I don't know if there's a way around this, but I almost wonder if it's worth having some of these important games played in domes or indoors somehow. I get that home field advantage is a thing, but when you go and you watch these games, the games that were played in the snow were just so much worse to watch. Like, the Rams-Bears game as opposed to the Rams-Panthers or Rams-Seahawks, all 3 games the Rams were in. If you watch those games, the Rams-Panthers game was amazing. The Rams-Seahawks game was amazing. The Rams-Bears game went to overtime, and I was bored the entire time. just because like of the snow, like there wasn't a lot of offense. And you look at the other side too, right? It's like look at the games before the snow, Bills Jaguars, Broncos Bills. Those games were really good, and then you have the Broncos Patriots. Now I get there's more to that, right, because of the injuries, but the Broncos Patriots game itself, like the Patriots didn't have those injuries, and they couldn't move the ball either with a guy who's probably going to be second in MVP voting at quarterback, right? And they still and not again the Broncos is good and all that, but like, I'm just saying like I don't know, it was difficult to watch, and it's weird because like you're used to playoff football being these snow games, these cool games, people like them, and that's great if you're a fan of running the ball and defense, but if you like seeing what the NFL has become more of lately, which is like the high flying action, the passing offenses, the opening up the offense. Like, I don't know. I just feel like these games where weather isn't a massive factor have been a lot more fun to watch. And maybe it's just this year because this year's playoff teams, maybe they weren't as flashy. I think it was Vinny who mentioned a couple weeks. Yeah, Vinny on the pod last week talked about he felt like the Final Four was kind of like the worst Final Four in memory based on like who normally isn't not the organizations, but like just the caliber of team based on previous seasons. And how true that is, I don't know. Well, we've yet to see that, right? Because you don't really compare teams from different eras. You can't really see them play. But yeah, I just think from an entertainment standpoint, at least for me personally, I significantly enjoyed the games that were played outside of massive weather issues versus those that were played in them. And I get that people like that, and I'm not saying we should do away with all of them, but maybe just like, hey, once we get to the AFC and NFC championship game, let's have those somewhere inside. And like I get, look, Broncos, the home team, they deserve the home game. Surely there is a dome near enough to Denver that they would still feel like they had home field advantage. I don't know. Like I said, there's probably not a way to do that, but I don't know. From a fan enjoyment standpoint, that one was a lot harder to watch. Like If these games were being played this weekend, knowing how they end already, I would still watch Rams Seahawks. I would not watch Broncos Patriots. Just have no desire to do. So it is what it is. But yeah, so now we move to the Super Bowl, and we'll see what happens. I do want to talk a couple of fun or not so fun facts about the Super Bowl and the teams in the Super Bowl. We'll start with the Seahawks. As a Raider fan, I can't help but point out that Geno Smith was so bad that the team he left immediately went to the Super Bowl, Seahawks, and the team he joined has the number 1 overall pick in the draft, my Raiders. So, man, Geno was bad as a Jet. I didn't understand why the Seahawks signed him. He was good as a Seahawk, and man, was he terrible as a Raider. And I get there's more that goes into that. We obviously don't have the same caliber of defense the Seahawks have. We obviously, don't have the same O-line and whatnot, but just still, the fact that he literally leaves Seattle and they go to a Super Bowl and we get the number 1 pick, that's pretty damning for my boy Geno. So we'll see what goes on. Because don't worry, he's still got 2 years and $60 million left on his contract with us. So I'm sure he'll still be around. One other Seahawk, not so fun fact if you're this guy. If you think it sucks to be Geno, it really sucks to be Tyler Lockett or Tyler Luckett, whatever you want to call him. He joined the Seahawks in 2015. That was right after their back-to-back Super Bowl runs in 2013 and 14. He was there for 10 years as their best wide receiver. I would argue that even when DK Metcalf was there putting up better numbers, he was the best actual receiver on the team. So for a decade, he was their best receiver. And then he left after 2024. And their first season after he leaves, they're back in the Super Bowl. So he literally was in Seattle for a decade in between Super Bowl runs. That's rough. That's rough for the guy. You got to feel for him. I mean, I'm sure he might be happy for some of his teammates and whatnot, former teammates, but that's rough. So that's the Seahawks side. And then obviously the big one on the Seahawks side, Sam Darnold. We talked about this before, but I think if you are in that Vikings front office, if the Seahawks win this game, how do you not just clean house if you're the Vikings owner? I mean, they let him walk. They didn't let him walk. They shipped him out the door. They didn't want him, right? They didn't trade him, but they didn't want him. They let him go. And now Darnold is playing to win the Super Bowl, and if they win, realistically, he will be named MVP because quarterbacks are named the MVP of the game. So if you think Seattle will win, which Vegas does, and I do, and they do win, then unless it's a situation where like Kenneth Walker has 180 yards and 3 touchdowns and Darnold has a bad game, like realistically, Darnold is probably going to be the MVP if Seattle wins. So you're talking about a guy Minnesota didn't want to become Super Bowl MVP the next year with a team that he went to that wasn't even in the playoffs the year prior. Yeah, that's not a good look. I think we might see some heads roll in Minnesota. I just felt like I needed to point that out. But yeah, good for Darnold. I mean, dude, talk about a career path. Someone asked him in an interview this week about when he last played the Patriots, because he was Jet then, and it was like his worst game of his career. He had like 5 picks. It was brutal, the stat line he had. Obviously, different team, long time ago. I don't think it's gonna happen again. But yeah, definitely a wild career run he's having. But good for him. Good for the Seahawks, and now they're playing for all the marbles. On the other side is another team that was not a playoff team last year. In fact, they're a 4-win team last year. And people, they keep questioning how good are the Patriots. Because, like, they keep winning, but they're kind of winning these close games. And no one really expected them to be there. But, you know, you can only play the people in front of you. I get that argument. But I also want to point out, this is their schedule. So, they, in their 17 regular season games, they only played 2 teams with a winning record. One of them was the Bills, who they did beat one time and lose one time. The other team they played with a winning record was the Steelers, who they lost to. And then they lost to the Raiders, which is just horrific. The rest of their games are wins, but they weren't against opponents with winning records. Every single other game they played 17 games. Of those 17, 14 of them were against teams with losing records. And of the 3 games against teams with winning records, they lost 2 of those 3. So they only had 1 win in the entire regular season against a team with a winning record, and that was when they beat the Bills the second time they played them, and it was 23-20 in a close game. And then in the playoffs, now obviously in the playoffs they've beaten 3 teams with winning records, but let's keep in mind in the playoffs they played against Justin Herbert with no O-line, C.J. Stroud, who was abysmal, and then Jarrett Stidham, who is a backup who hadn't played in years. And again, you can only play the people who are put in front of you. I get that. And I don't think Drake May is bad. I do think he's been a good player this year. But you got to look at that schedule and be like, they kind of walked to the Super Bowl, and then next year when they have a harder schedule, because that's the way, for those who don't know, the way NFL scheduling works is based on how you finish in the previous year. They try to adjust the schedule accordingly because they want to try to make the bad teams better and the good teams, well, not worse, but they want to have parity in the league. So they will have a much more difficult schedule next year, and it will be, I mean, obviously they still get to play the Dolphins and the Jets twice, so there's 4 wins right there. But the rest of their schedule will presumably be much tougher next year, and I'm curious to see how many games they win next year. I feel like we're going to see regression coming out of this Patriots team. So this is not that their window is closing by any means. They are a very young team, so their window is wide open. But I'm just saying, if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, I think it may be a couple of years before they try to make another run, just because I think it's going to be a lot more, much more difficult uphill battle next year. But yeah, so that's kind of where we are. These are 2 teams that beginning of the year no one thought would be there. Honestly, middle of the year no one thought would be there. But here we are at the end of the year, and they're both there. And they're both, they're both deserving, because you can only play who's put in front of you. And they did that, and they won. And now they're at the big dance. I think Seattle's a heavy favorite, but you never know. Any given Sunday, right? Anything can happen. So those are kind of my takes on the game and the players in the game and whatnot. One thing I did forget to mention when I was talking about like having these terrible outdoor games. Another reason I think it'd be nice to, like, kickers being worthless really takes away from the game. Like, kicking is a big part of football, and when you're in a situation where you can't rely on your kickers to make field goals, like, we live in a world now, and I get that it used to be this way, but we live in a world now where like 50 yards are automatic, right? Used to it was like 30 yards are automatic, then 40. Now it's 50. Like, I mean, Cam Little, broke and tied the record this year for longest field goal. So 50 yarders used to be automatic, and we were having multiple missed kicks from 40 yards out because of the weather. And it's like, when you take away the entire kicking game, especially from these teams that are built on defense, it really takes away, from the game to me. And And maybe that just be, being a Raider fan, one of the only good things we had for a long time was kickers with Janikowski and then Carlson. So, maybe I'm biased, but it is what it is. All right. So that's my talk about the actual Super Bowl and whatnot. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual NFL news from around the league. There have been a couple of things that have gone on this week. So we'll start. We'll keep it a little more Patriots talk. Sorry, just bear with me. But this is about the Hall of Fame. So for those who have not been following the news, Bill Belichick, former coach of the Patriots, he is not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. In order to do that, there's 50 voters. You need to get 40 of them to get first ballot. He did not. He did not get enough votes, even though he leads coaches all time in playoff wins, Super Bowl appearances, and Super Bowl wins. And one of the people who gave the reasoning, Bill Polian, used to be a general manager for the Colts, the reasoning he gave was that they were holding the cheating scandals against Belichick. I really wish the guys were here to discuss this, because for those who don't know me well enough, I will say it here now. I think cheating should be a lifetime ban. I am very anti-cheating in sports, and I think if you were caught cheating intentionally, it should be a lifetime ban. Things like steroids, for example, there's always a chance you didn't know that it was like a banned substance. Like, you should know what you're putting in your body, but look, there's a chance. I think that should be, the first time it's a year suspension, and then the second time lifetime ban. For an actual cheating, like, hey, I'm deflating balls, or I'm videotaping people's practice, Spygate, things like that, lifetime ban, no question. So for me, all the people that voted not to put him in the Hall of Fame, I have no problem with that, because I am anti-cheating. That being said, I know a lot of people feel opposite to that, and I do understand that argument as well, because if Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer as a coach, who is, right? Because no one did it better, unless you're trying to say, oh, well, he only did that well because of Brady. But then if you're saying he only did that well because of Brady, does that affect every other coach who happened to have a good quarterback when they did well? And also, are you then going to turn around and say Brady's a first ballot Hall of Famer because he was also involved in these cheating scandals? In fact, Deflategate was much more on Brady than Belichick. Now, Belichick was more involved with Spygate, so they each had their own cheating scandal, even though they were both there for both of them. So it's interesting. And the reason that I bring up the potential for Brady also being, in this limbo, because it happened to Vinatieri, Adam Vinatieri, the kicker last year. Yep, kicker's becoming a theme. Sorry, guys. Last year, Adam Vinatieri was also not a first ballot Hall of Famer. And for those who don't know, Vinatieri should probably be a first ballot Hall of Fame kicker. I mean, this is a guy who was a premier kicker in the league for a long time and has multiple Super Bowl wins. So the fact that he was not a first ballot Hall of Famer, it's like, if he's not, then who is? So I just feel like, he holds the record for field goals made. And it's like, okay, if you hold the record for field goals made, why aren't you a Hall of Famer? So, I don't know. I just feel like, and obviously, look, if you're punishing him for the Patriots cheating scandal, that one's a little more weird, because, pretty sure he had nothing to do with Spygate or Deflategate, because a kicker definitely doesn't want the balls deflated, and watching their practice would not affect anything he does. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. There's obviously some voters who are, in my opinion, salty about the Patriots dynasty. And if they're people like me who no, we just despise cheating, I'm cool with that, but I'm also impartial, and I don't think that's why it was. I think it was a lot more salt than it was to do with them being anti-cheating. So I just think, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the whole X number of people get into the Hall of Fame each year system anyway. I think it should be the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Very Good. You're either good enough to get in or you aren't. And I don't think there should be a limit. I think if there are 12 people eligible that are good enough to be in the Hall in a given year, they should all go in. And if there's only 2 people eligible that are good enough, then only those 2 should go in. I don't think it should be, well, this guy hasn't been good enough to get in for the last 7 years, but this upcoming class doesn't have anyone good enough, so he's finally going to get in. It shouldn't be the Hall of Very Good. It should be the Hall of Fame. But if it's going to be the Hall of Fame, then people like Belichick and Vinatieri should probably be first balloters, unless you're going to take my standpoint of cheaters should never be allowed in. The problem I have is these guys didn't say they're not going to, well, and I say these guys, Polian specifically, didn't say he's not letting him in because of cheating ever. He said he doesn't believe he should be first ballot because of the cheating scandal. And it's like, so you're still going to make him a Hall of Famer? You're just making him wait a year? That doesn't do anything. Like, sure, that makes media story. I mean, gives me something to talk about in this podcast, and gives the talking heads at ESPN and Fox Sports and all those other places stuff to talk about, and that's cool. But you're not really standing on any moral high ground if you're like, all right, we despise cheating temporarily, right? So that's kind of my issue with it, which, like, I never thought I'd be up here defending Patriots, coaches, players, what have you. But that's just how I feel. I just feel like if you're going to make a stand based on your ethics or your morals, you should make that stand, and you shouldn't back down from it. Saying that I'm going to do this for this one temporary time and then let it go, well, you're not really making a stand, you're just being salty. That's how I feel about it. So the people that voted him to not be in the Hall of Fame this year, if they continually vote him to not be in the Hall of Fame, and it's because they despise cheating, hats off to you. I feel the same way. Mad props. But anyone who voted no this year, who then changes their vote to yes next year, whether it be because they were spiteful, they were salty, or even just because they caved to media pressure, and they originally were anti-cheating, but they caved to media pressure to put him in, I think all of you should lose your vote. Anyone who voted no to Bill Belichick this year and votes yes to him next year should not be a Hall of Fame voter, because you either believe he is a Hall of Fame caliber coach or you don't. Period. Whatever your reasons, whatever your criteria, however you feel about what he did on the field, off the field, in the booth, as a GM, what have you, however you feel about him, you either believe that he is one of the best and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, or you don't and don't think he deserves to be in. You can't vote no one year and yes the next. That's hot garbage if you ask me. So anyone who's like that, you should lose your vote. All right. Now that we've thrown some shade at the Hall of Fame, I'm going to throw even more shade at the Pro Bowl. Now, the Pro Bowl has never been like the pinnacle that players want to play in, that people want to see. I get that. The Pro Bowl has never been must-watch television. They've tried a few different things. Obviously, they used to have a game, but outside of that one amazing play by Champ Bailey, we never see people going hard in those games because, well, why would you? You're not getting a massive game day paycheck, and you don't want to risk injury, and your season is over. Anyone in the Pro Bowl, their season is already over. The only game after that is the Super Bowl. People that make the Super Bowl do not play in the Pro Bowl, even if they were, voted in. So they don't even do a game anymore. They switched to skills competitions for a while. They did flag football games for a while. They had people pick teams where it wasn't even AFC versus NFC. It was just trying to pick teams. They tried a lot of different variations to try to garner interest. And look, there are some cool things like seeing kickers play horse. I keep going back to kickers. I didn't think I'd be up here holding down the fort for kickers, but that's what I'm doing today. But kickers playing horse and different skills competitions, and they try to make it fun and interesting, and I get all that. But also, like, if you're gonna have any respectability, the same with the Hall of Fame, you should only go to the Hall of Fame if you're an all-time great. You should only be in the Pro Bowl if you're one of the best players that year. And the reason I'm talking about the Pro Bowl is because Shedeur Sanders, that's right, Shedeur Sanders was added to the Pro Bowl roster. Now, for those wondering, how on earth did this guy make the Pro Bowl? I don't know, man. I honestly can't tell you that. Now, a lot of it has to do with players backing out. There are obviously, if a player is elected to the Pro Bowl, like, say, Drake May, but then he is in the Super Bowl, he obviously can't go, so that opens up a spot. There might be other players that get in and then don't want to go. Not that he was a Pro Bowler, but let's say Bo Nix was one, right? Like, he obviously can't go now because he's a broken ankle. Maybe Josh Allen just didn't want to go and do it. He just recently had a child or is having a child. I can't remember which. So, like, he can't make time for it anymore because, like I said, it's not like a big prestigious thing, what have you. I get that there are people that don't want to go, but you lose so much credibility when you put a rookie in the Pro Bowl who threw 7 TDs with 10 interceptions on 56% completion percentage. Like, that's not good stats. And I'm not bashing Shedeur Sanders. He only played in like 6 games, right? Like, how many games did he actually start? He played in 7. He played in 8 games. He started 7 of them, although he did throw a lot of passes in that one game. So, like, how are you going to look at it? 7, 8 games, less than half the season. This guy played less than half the season. He wasn't good, but again, he was a rookie. He started the year out third string. He's got some developing to do. This is not me bashing him, but this guy should not have made the Pro Bowl. And, I mean, I find it really hard to believe that there was really not a single other AFC quarterback who you could have put in the Pro Bowl instead of Shedeur Sanders. Because it's a joke. It turns your event into a joke, and you already kind of are a laughingstock event. You've worked really hard to try to innovate and change things to make it more interesting to people. And I do understand that there might be some people that will watch because he is in the Pro Bowl. So maybe it puts, the proverbial butts in seats. But just you lose so much credibility when you put someone who blatantly does not deserve to be there in that game. If you take out the game he played against Tennessee, like this is like his big breakout game, every other game, I would argue he did not play well. His next best game, besides the Tennessee game, was going 11 for 20 against the Raiders for 200 yards and a touch with a pick. Every other game he played, he had more interceptions than touchdowns, with the exception of the Titans and Raiders game where he was tied, right? So it's like, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes you just have to go without it. If there's literally no one else who would go to the Pro Bowl, you just don't have an extra guy. Because, like, what does it matter? What does it matter if you don't have a full roster? You're playing a flag football game anyway. Let the running backs and the wide receivers throw passes. Half the time we have these trick plays in the league anyway. I don't know. I don't want to run on this too long, but this is a guy who got his jersey retired at Colorado when he absolutely should not have. And there were more deserving players like Cordell Stewart that should have and didn't. And then now he's in the Pro Bowl as a rookie. And here we go. QBR 18.9. Good Lord, man. Like, come on. How's that guy? You're telling me this is a Pro Bowl quarterback. Someone who deserves to be in the Pro Bowl. I don't know. I feel like the Hall of Fame and the Pro Bowl both kind of have some egg on their face, kind of dropped the ball this past week. But that's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, I would have loved to discuss this with somebody, but there's nobody here. So let me know what you guys think either in the comments or shoot me a text or whatever. I mean, some of you listening don't want my phone number, and I don't want you to because you're probably some rando, but I'm glad you're listening. But yeah, let me know what you think about kind of a lot of these things. A lot of this stuff I really would love to have debated with someone else, and maybe we'll touch on it at some point. But like I said, it was championship weekend. I wanted to at least cover football and the topics and whatnot. And I'm going to leave you with a question, because I did have a question. Again, I wanted to have someone to talk to about this, and there's no one here to talk to. So you're going to hear me rant a little bit, but I'm going to leave you with a question. And my question for you is, what do you think is the best announcer combo in pro football right now? Or it could be sports in general if you don't have one in pro football, but used to, as Madden and Summerall was the gold standard. Like that was who you listened to. You wanted to hear those guys, and it wasn't, some people it's because they thought they had great commentary. Some people thought they had a great analysis. Some people just thought they were entertaining for whatever, whatever your reasons are. It was them. And then for a while, it was Al Michaels. And then for a while, it was whoever you love, Troy and Joe, like Troy and Joe Buck, whoever. Like everyone has their own favorites, and I'm curious who would be your best combo. And what I mean by that is you don't have to take a team that's already together. So for example, the Joe Buck Troy Aikman combo, I think Joe Buck is one of the better actual like play-by-play guys in sports because he does it for both baseball and football. He's very good at it. Troy Aikman isn't always the most entertaining or the best analyst. Not that he's not good, not that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He just sometimes can be a little dull. So like maybe you want to swap him out for Tony Romo because you like that banter of Tony Romo, calling plays before they happen or whoever. So I'm just curious, who do you guys think would be your best combo? And also, what do you think would be the worst combo, right? Because like I know a lot of people like a lot of people bash Collinsworth for like the random things he says, right? So like if you think Collinsworth is one of the worst, analysts, what play-by-play guy do you put him with to make the worst possible combo? Like for me personally, any game where Tom Brady is commentating, I have to mute the TV. I just can't listen to that guy. I can't stand him. For those, like I said, like about the cheating earlier, I just can't stand cheaters. I just don't like him as a person. So having to hear him commentate on games bothers me. So like for me, my worst announcer combo would be Brady with pretty much anybody. But yeah. So tell me, who do you guys think, like, who's the worst combo and who's the best and why? Don't just say like, oh, it's these guys. Like, why are they your worst, right? Like I said, my worst being Brady has nothing to do with his actual analysis of the game. It's just I don't like him as a person, right? So what's your reasoning behind it? Who do you think is the best announcing combo? Who's the worst announcing combo? And it doesn't have to be in football. I mean, football's what this is focused on, but I like sports in general. If you've got someone from, baseball, basketball, hockey, what have you, feel free to mix and match. And if you think, hey, this one announcer from basketball, if you were to pair, Marv Albert with I don't know, man, with Chris Collinsworth, if you think Marv Albert and Chris Collinsworth would be a great combo, go for it, right? Like let me know who your dream team combo is and why. So that's my takeaway. That's my rant about announcers. I'm just curious to know what you guys think, because I was kind of playing with some in my head. I think for me personally, I think I would love the Joe Buck Tony Romo one that I mentioned earlier. I think he's still Joe Buck with a Cowboys QB. I just think Joe Buck on ESPN on the Monday Night Football game has been, for me, very entertaining. I enjoy listening to him. He makes me excited about the game. And I think Romo, the way Romo does his analysis is kind of like one of your buddies talking to you, is kind of the vibe I get from him. But it's a buddy that actually knows what he's talking about. So it's not like talking to Mitch and Vinny, right? It's like someone who actually knows. Sorry, guys, that throws shade. So someone who actually knows what they're talking about, but he's like talking to you like a buddy. And I think that could be good banner. Plus, you get to keep Cowboys QB, right? You're just shoving out Aikman for Romo. So yeah. Let me know what you guys think. That's my 2 cents, my hot takes. Again, my not so bold prediction is the Seahawks are going to take it away, and I will see you all at the Super Bowl party. Hope to see you there, and then we might do a special episode from the Super Bowl party where we record with some of the denizens there, the Delvers, so to speak, to let them get their 2 cents in. But yeah, that's all for now. I'm Alex the Shark Sparks, and I will see you, ladies and gentlemen, next time.